Bank rage. A security guard is rushed to the hospital after the NYPD says he was stabbed by an irate customer.
I hope you enjoyed the break, the humidity, the storms, all back in time for the weekend.
How much money do you make? How asking your friends that taboo question might help you make more money in the long run. This is News 4 Now for July 15th. I'm Adam Cooperstein, and it is a shocking crime at an Upper East Side bank. Police say an angry customer stabbed a private security guard in the neck. It all happened just before 9 Friday morning at a Chase Bank on 86th Street and 2nd Avenue. Police tell us a customer wanted to be let inside the bank, but it wasn't open yet. They say he got angry because he saw workers going into the building. The NYPD says he left, then came back and asked for a service that's not being offered at that location. And that is when he became even more angry and got escorted out, and he then stabbed a security guard. That security guard suffered severe injuries, and so far, that man has not been arrested. The city now opening its doors to clinics to get more people the monkeypox vaccine. You can't just walk up and get one. You will need an appointment, and FYI, they're hard to come by. Taking a look at the tri-state right now, there are more than 450 confirmed cases, most of them in New York City with 389. 8,200 first dose appointments for the monkeypox vaccine are being added to the city's website, but they will not last long. We told you earlier this week, the site crashed because of so much demand for appointments. 2 city council members are now calling this vaccine rollout a failure, and they want an emergency oversight hearing to address it all. That outbreak still primarily affecting gay men or other men who have sex with men, and the community-based organization Harlem United is extremely concerned now about what they say has been an inequitable distribution of the vaccine so far.
I'm excited about the sites, but I'm just hoping it's not going to be the similar rollout from COVID, because we were one of the sites that with the COVID rollout, even though you may be making appointments, most of the sites you have to make sure you have staffing capacity to meet the demand. We're seeing lines of state all over the state right now, and that means we need more healthcare workers to be able to assist with the rollout. So even having 8,000 more slots, just making sure you have capacity at those sites to actually see the patients.
On Sunday, these 3 mass vaccination sites are going to be open for appointments: Bronx High School of Science, Aviation High School in Queens, and Bushwick Education in Brooklyn. Another clinic is also going to open on Staten Island, too. In Lower Manhattan, a woman is recovering after a man smashed her head against a glass door as he tried to steal her French bulldog. Police say the incident happened last month, and you can see the suspect follow the woman into an office building on Broadway near Rector Street. He then tried to grab her dog, and during that struggle, smashed her head against the glass before he ran away. That woman was treated at the hospital for a head injury. The dog was not hurt. New York City has the most expensive Uber rides in the country. On average, customers pay $34.74 for a 6.2-mile ride. That's according to a new study by NetCredit. Factors contributing to the high price include New York's minimum wage for drivers and the congestion surcharge.
Hi there, I'm Storm Team 4 meteorologist Maria LaRosa. Wrapped up a summery weekend on a pleasant note. The humidity stayed in check, but we're going to start to see some changes heading into tomorrow morning. In the meantime, though, fair skies for most of us during the evening time. 6 p.m. temperature 80 degrees, but we'll be down into the mid-70s by 10 o'clock with fair skies. After midnight, though, we'll start to see some of those clouds creep in. And some of us starting off the evening actually with a few spotty showers, most of us on the dry side. But again, you can see by sunrise tomorrow, not as much sunshine, more cloud cover, and that humidity is going to start to creep back up too after being nice and dry during the day on Friday. Starting off with temperatures north and west of the city in the 50s and 60s from Poughkeepsie and Sussex will be right about 70 in the city. Lots of upper 60s from Bridgeport, Islip, Eastport, and down the shore, Belmar starting off in the 60s.
All right, let's talk money. Seriously, NBCLX has the reason talking about how much money people make might actually help close pay equity gaps.
There we go. So here to discuss this growing trend and how it might benefit us all or not is Money Confidential podcast host Stephanie O'Connell Rodriguez. Hi, Stephanie. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
How much money do you make?
Well, I work for myself, so it really changes a lot, but I'm all about talking about it.
Yeah, let's break it down. So we just heard Shark Tank guy Kevin O'Leary say employers know workers will talk about their salary amongst each other. That's kind of inevitable, I guess. If that's the case, why do you think more employees aren't paid fairly or even equally at all?
Well, this is not a new trend, right? We have pay inequity going back forever, sometimes on metrics that are familiar to us, gender pay gap, racial pay gap, but sometimes there's just all kinds of different inequities that arise for myriad reasons. And it can be really hard to unearth what those reasons are and how to close those gaps if you don't actually have the information about what those gaps are to begin with. And I think that's why we're seeing this trend toward talking about numbers with our coworkers.
Yeah, I guess that is step one. So it's always been there. The only difference is that people are talking about it now. So I guess my next question to you is, have you ever had a conversation with coworkers about salary?
Yeah, I talk to people about what I make all the time, particularly as somebody who's done a lot of freelance work, because there isn't necessarily the Glassdoor or the PayScale website where you can at least, do a little bit of internet searching to try to ground your numbers in something specific. So those conversations that are more informal with colleagues, with coworkers, that becomes even more important. But that's true across the board. And one of the ways I do it is I am very vulnerable and I am very curious. People love to give advice. So if you can frame this conversation through your own vulnerability, I feel like I'm being underpaid. I was thinking I should negotiate a raise. Do you have any insight into what I should be asking for? That's a much less threatening way to go about this conversation than saying, hey, what do you make? Tell me.
Yeah, and I take it that conversation did benefit you in some way or another, didn't it?
Absolutely. And I like to pass it on too, because I'm of the philosophy that, a rising tide lifts all boats. It doesn't really help me to charge, twice as much for something as my colleague, or rather for my colleague to charge half as much as I do, because then they're never going to come to me. So I think really framing this as a collective good and as employee power is a good way to think about this as well.
I wonder why it's awkward to talk about it. Do you ever think about why it's awkward or weird to talk about how much money you make? At the core of it, we're transparent with so many other things. Why do you think it's awkward specifically to talk about somebody when getting to the numbers?
Yeah, well, I mean, money is always a little bit awkward,
Yeah.
but especially when it comes to your income, it's really, really easy to conflate your income with your self-worth, right? Even the language, ask for what you're worth. I actually really don't like that language because it really gets people thinking about, well, if I don't make a lot of money, I'm not worth as much as this person who makes more than me. So I think reframing it as, well, what is this work worth in this setting? So like the same job gets paid more in one location than another because the cost of living there might be higher. That doesn't make you more valuable as a human being, right? So it's this kind of really sticky subject, and it can feel very emotional and sticky, and that's why it can be a little bit hard to talk about.
Yeah, our value as humans being tied to money, that's a whole nother conversation about society. I wish this was a podcast and we had 3 hours to dive into that one, but we don't. We got to keep it tight. I mentioned earlier that people are like no longer afraid to talk about these things. Gen Zers, millennials, they're more open about talking about it. Do you think that people are talking about it more and it's less frowned upon to mention these things? Or is it just that we have social media and it's seemingly, being talked about more?
I think it's a combination of factors. I think on the one hand, what you're seeing right now is almost like a new kind of labor movement where employees are feeling more empowered. They have felt like they've been really undervalued. They felt like there's all this income inequality, economic inequality, and it's gotten to a breaking point, particularly in the aftermath of the pandemic, and everybody's saying, I've had it. And so people are turning to each other to figure out how to organize. And part of that is talking about the numbers and saying, what are you asking for? How can we ask for more altogether. I think a second piece of this is, to your point, technology. Absolutely. Being on social media, being able to have these conversations in a public domain, and even things like Slack channels or Facebook groups that allow you to connect with people maybe who weren't in your immediate social circle before, and so you didn't like have anyone with your same job that you personally knew. But now that you can kind of talk to anybody anywhere in the world and get a sense of what they're making, that I think facilitates a lot of the conversation too. And then I think we can't ignore BLM and Me Too, because those really brought issues of inequity to the surface, and that includes our money and our pay.
All of that fascinating, especially Slack. I mean, how social even our work has become. It's all interesting. It's all brand new, happening so fast. Stephanie O'Connell Rodriguez, thank you so much for coming on the show and breaking it down. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you right back here on News 4 Now next time.